Hello, I'm your host, Skeptical Scott.
And I am this week's co-host and brother, Doubtful Dave.
Ooh, I like that. Hey, welcome to Funny You Say That, the heathen, there and back again. If you've ever rethought what you were taught and then said, why did I believe that? Well, this show's for you. Please join us as we drop the supernatural, embrace the rational, and believe in as many true things as possible.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
What's the title of today's episode?
Christian Guys Gone Wild. What do you think? All right, well, if you've been listening to our show, I call Season 1 the Wonder Years, as many of the mile markers into religion were quite innocent and curious. Season 2 has taken a turn into the Blunder Years. Before we go any further, I want to read part of the general description of the main event we are rehashing today. Our mission, to enable people to recover their true identity and to live wholeheartedly from it. What is the Wild at Heart Retreat? Hey, you know what? Remembering some of the movie clips we watched during this event, Dave, I need to read the rest with some exciting music. To recover your wild heart. A 4-day retreat for men to rediscover who they truly are. A Wild at Heart retreat isn't just another men's retreat. This event is an honest, no BS trek into the deep passions and desires of a man's heart, the healing of the wounds he's taken in this battle, the realm of fatherhood and sex and God and calling, life as it was meant to be lived. Through the sessions, times of quiet reflection, movies, adventures, and downtime, you will discover something profound about the heart of God and the heart He gave you as a man. Now, it's your turn. Doubtful Dave, my brother in arms and my brother in uterus, welcome to Funny You Say That.
Hey, thanks, man.
Thanks for joining us. And Dave, can you give us a clue on where you're joining us from today? And at the time of recording, listeners, it's actually New Year's Eve. So this represents the first interview of Project 2025. Damn it, I got to quit calling it that. Briefly, tell us how you're feeling here, having just celebrated the holidays and looking ahead.
All right. Well, I am in upstate New York at my home. It's that mysterious holidays time, DAZE, where you don't know what day of the week it is. Between,
True.
So the holidays can be, a pretty crazy time, lots of travel, this and that. But this year we kept it simple. We've been just hanging out as a family. Kids are home from college, still having to go to work occasionally, but still don't know what day of the week it is. Having Christmas and New Year's on Wednesdays. Can we keep that?
It's not bad, is it?
Totally blows up 2 weeks. It's great.
And it also, it's great because it's holiday on Wednesdays, football on the weekends. I mean, just, college football bowls every day, it seems like. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It's like, man, can't we just keep doing this? That's all I can say on that.
Hey, I love that. And we don't know when Christmas really was anyway, right? The birth of Jesus could have been Wednesday. So why not? Let's make it official. Meaning, like, when was it day? Wednesday. When? I don't know. All right. Well, Dave, thanks for joining me and us, really, to discuss this particular chapter of the journey into religion. This is the phase where we made a commitment, and now we have left the Shire. We are on an adventure into the heights of the Christian mountains together. We have studied in the valleys, and now we pick up our weapons to battle. To battle for our what? Our honor? Our glory? No, we battle for our invisible God against imaginary forces to collect and strengthen as many possible believers' hearts as we can. We fight for their impossible afterlives. Does that about sum it up, Dave?
Yeah, that's what it was all about, turning us into good little Christian soldiers. Soldiers, right?
I guess so. I don't know. We'll see.
Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war.
Hey, dude, you are fitting
Gotta
right
have war.
in. You are fitting right in with us. This is great. So let me set the backdrop time-wise. I looked at a Facebook post of mine from 12 years ago, and it stated, "Forgiven and living, forgiving and living." It's like cringe, right? Cringe. I guess that's what the kids say these days. That was cringe. But
Yeah.
I'd say my walk of faith, where I would have said, yes, I'm a Christian, to have lasted maybe just over a decade. We're roughly talking from mid-20s to mid-30s. And what do you think might happen when you're starting to lose your grasp on faith, like sand through your hands? You reach out one more time and you try to drag someone down with you, right, Dave?
Double down.
What were you thinking in your early to mid-30s?
Time of life-wise, we had 3 very young kids. Recently moved from one place to another in West Virginia. And yeah, we were just trying to figure out life. So we, spiritually, were kind of bouncing around, and we were at the Unitarian Church. And then we decided to get something closer to our home, because going to the Unitarian place was kind of a long drive, and the place smelled funny, and
That's great.
I'm not joking. These are things that entered into the discussion. So, and also, the Unitarian churches, our experience there, pretty awesome. But at the time, it sort of felt untethered too, like that there was no real foundation. It was kind of fuzzy. Yeah. So we're looking for maybe something a little more of an anchor to go down on, and also something close to our home. So we were shopping around churches at the time.
Yeah, I get that. And so, Dave, this is pretty fun for me for a couple of reasons. Because number one, back then when I invited you to camp to escape from 3 young kids and work responsibilities, I didn't know I didn't know where you stood on religion back then. And number two, I'm not exactly sure where you stand now. So this gives us an excuse to talk about these things. But I think you have some clues where I stand, especially as a listener to the podcast. So this is going to be fun. Let's start with this. When I invited you to get away from your state to join me in Lake City, Michigan for a 4-day men's retreat, what did you think initially?
Honestly, a bit of a homecoming, because, the opportunity to go be with my brother in Michigan, it's like, great. That sounds awesome. Also, as any father can attest to, if they have like young kids, somewhere around kindergarten, first grade, 2 of them, and then the other one, a baby. So just a little chaotic. It's like, wait, get away for 4 days and just chill out and focus on nothing but having fun with my brother. Okay.
Dude, I'm pretty sure when I invited you, I didn't say things like, oh, and by the way, it's a Christian camp. And, I think it was more like, hey, you want to go outside and play some Frisbee golf? And
right. Well, and you're saying, what did you think? And that's what I thought.
Exactly. So we will dig into some of the main topics and takeaways from the actual content of the conference. But first, when you arrived at that place, what did it look like? What were your first impressions of the venue?
Pretty awesome. Actually, things organized. You get there and everyone's welcoming you, and the people were warm, and it just looked like a kind of a pretty cool, I guess you could say, playground almost.
That's a great way to put it, a playground. Yeah, it's like a lodge,
Yep.
And so ginormous dining area, lots of good food, huge fireplaces.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of like a giant summer camp.
Yeah, we're talking about men of all ages, and we actually did play Foursquare. I don't know if you did or not.
I don't remember.
I sometimes
that.
mix up. Okay, so just for clarity, this was my second time going. So the first time I went, there was a huge line of people playing Foursquare, and it got really competitive. These are all, bearded men getting upset and just excited.
Back at the playground.
But anyway, it is a playground. Lots of fun. And these retreats, They've been around for a long time. They started right after the book Wild at Heart was written by John Eldredge. So listeners, a few things you should know that we didn't necessarily get ahead of time are the core beliefs of John Eldredge and his entire organization. I'll keep this short. I think it's important that we know this. And this is straight from their website. They believe the Bible is the inspired and only infallible, inerrant, authoritative Word of God. God created mankind in his image. Adam and Eve, the first human beings, chose to rebel against God, became separated from God, and so the image of God in mankind was then forever distorted and subject to the power of the devil, and sinful nature was passed on to all their progeny. The only remedy is redemption through the faith in Jesus Christ. Quote, we believe when a person exercises saving faith in Christ, he passes immediately out of the spiritual death and into spiritual life, from the old creation into the new, with a new nature and a new heart. He is accepted and loved, one with Christ forever. Dave, did you hear that? The forever part? So I guess we're all set, no matter what we believe today, right? So it says forever, so I guess we can shut the podcast off.
Yeah, thank God. It's done. The work is done. We don't have to do anything at this point.
Again, there's a lot of topics here, but I've narrowed it down to 3 big categories: masculine hearts, battle wounds, and fighting the enemy. And with each of these, Dave, we'll summarize a couple of points. I'll ask you what you appreciate about what you learned, and maybe what had you scratching your head, and then maybe in hindsight, what makes you call bullshit. We're going to go ahead and start with number 1 topic, the wild heart. Any first impressions you remember on the topic of a man's wild heart?
The first thing that comes to mind is, from the get-go, a rigid defining of what it means to be a man.
One way they set the stage at the conference is they let us know that we're in a great epic story. The way they kind of tap into that wildness, or however you want to call it, they share a lot of movie clips. Do you remember any of those?
Certainly the Braveheart one.
Yeah. Freedom! Yeah, yes.
And also, I kind of am shocked that I didn't realize, watching Braveheart before, the very not subtle, not at all subtle, lining up with the story of Christ and the crucifixion and everything.
Wallace is definitely a Christ character.
Yep.
I also remember Band of Brothers, really good. Saving Private Ryan. There's a lot of references to things like Lord of the Rings. So you get the idea, listeners, that this is about men. And
yeah, things about being part of a bigger story.
Yeah,
yep.
Which, that kind of that did and does something for me. I definitely, I've downloaded all of the Lord of the Rings.
Who doesn't want to be part of something larger than themselves?
Yeah, so getting back to that masculinity part, when you said rigid definition there, this is a quest for authentic masculinity, right? Think of a man exploring the wild, and this is the way they actually say it in the book, the untamed territories of his soul, gender, and spirituality. There's actually something that bothers me already about hearing untamed territories. Maybe it's the historian in me, the rugged individualist, let's take over the land kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So man's heart is wild because we're made in God's image. A couple more things summary wise, that the heart of man is undomesticated, doesn't want to be a mere spectator in life's grand drama. It wants to be the hero, the protagonist, the one who charges the castle, slays the giant, and rescues the damsel in distress. I mean, what do you think about that? I don't want to be mild at heart. I want to be wild at heart.
You said cringe?
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah.
It's a little too on the nose, I guess you could say. I guess you could say I am a feminist in some ways. Mm-hmm. The things that I want for my daughters, the things I see in my daughters, the things I feel in none of that is really addressed.
They do, towards the end of the conference, we talk about Eve. They call it the beauty to rescue, that she has her own needs. But even there...
The rib?
The rib.
Right? Yeah.
We should have called the rib at your side.
Right, yep. It's just a part of me. I am the center of this story, and she's just my rib.
No, that's great. I think of your daughters too, and I can see how that doesn't really land, and even your wife as well, very independent person. So we'll get to the heart of Eve, I guess, later. But I think the interesting part to me is I want to be a hero in my own story. And it goes back to the individualism, the cynic in me, I guess. A lot of times when I hear people talking about God and what God's telling them and all of that, it kind of taps into that whole, I want to be the main character. And there's just something that rubs me the wrong way on that.
Yeah, this is also how the theme of that whole weekend did not land with me that well, at least in this aspect. I mean, there was much about it that, was very moving, but this, playing a central role, I don't know, I guess I always just feel more collectively oriented. What's good for the whole group, what's for the greater good, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. And certainly there is that reminder, as guys, we tend to go it alone a lot of times, and that's a dangerous place.
Yeah.
We need a band of brothers, so to speak, and that's part of the whole idea there. I guess the other part that rubs me the wrong way, especially these days, I feel like to just create this binary of this is how guys are and this is how girls are, just doesn't, for me anyway, it doesn't land for everyone. It's not universal.
Yeah, definitely.
So number 2 was about the wound, right? And this is where you saw a lot of tears come out from the guys. And when we say the guys and what it looks like, there's a stage, right? And the seating's great. There's a couple VIP chairs, like leather chairs kind of thing, that was always rotated and reserved for people that we wanted to honor. Just a nice stage, not huge, pretty intimate. The typical thing would be they would present a topic. The speakers were very gifted usually and would really tell their own story. And then we would go out into the woods by ourselves and journal for a while on the topic and then come back, that kind of thing. So one of those topics was the wound, and the summary here, that every boy on his journey takes an arrow in the center of his heart. This wound, many times given by his father, is rarely discussed and even more rarely healed, and every man carries it. So that brings the key question of the whole chapter of, do I have what it takes? And that we carry that, I don't know if I'm good enough, do I have what it takes question really around our whole lives. The way John Eldredge puts it, until a man knows the answer to that question, he's going to be forever haunted by that question or crippled by the answers that he has been given. Any impressions here when you hear that about the wound? And do you feel like it's a core issue for men?
I don't know. I guess I have a tough time with this one. I can't even remember what I identified as my core wound.
Yeah, they definitely ask us to do that.
Yeah, and I just don't, it's odd, but I don't remember what it was. I should remember that.
I definitely heard a lot of stories there, especially wounds by the father.
One of the most powerful things about the weekend was the testimony.
Yeah.
And the testimony meaning, the personal experiences that were revealed. And I'm not just talking about the stage ones, which were, of course, moving, but especially when we'd all gather for lunch or dinner and sit at different tables and we would talk to the other guys there, and some of the stories that came out, I'm just like, wow, this is heavy and this is amazing. Yeah. That's what I was most moved by during the whole weekend, honestly.
Very good. Yeah. Do you remember, at least topically, some of that maybe was related to wounds?
Specifically to a wound early on in life? No. But, there was an older gentleman there, had been an alcoholic, lost his wife remarried, all that stuff. He totally lost his life as he knew it. Then he found his church and Wild at Heart and everything else, and was able to turn himself sober, really get his life together as best as he can.
Yeah.
And then he just held out the hope that someday he would be reunited with his wife.
So that was just inspiring to hear somebody that committed. Yeah.
And at the same time, disturbing because he considered his wife his wife.
I see what you mean.
He lost his thing, his object. She's remarried.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like dead set on getting her back, like that it's not her choice.
Thank you for that. The wounds that I heard from people would be related to things like, let's say, a dad calls his son a wuss or man up, those kind of things where it especially stings from a father because that's the one source, right? And
a bully is one thing, but coming straight from your father, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And then, I know our father's still alive and everything. I was really trying to, because it says frequently the wound is from the father.
Right. And so you're trying to invent how.
And I'm so happy to say that we have a very loving father, I never felt, I never felt like directly made fun of or something like that.
Right. Or there wasn't this standard that I was falling short of.
Right.
That I had to meet to be accepted by him. It was never like that.
I chewed on this for a while because, again, I was in this circle for years. Beyond the conference, I would go to small groups and all that kind of stuff. And so, if anything, just to be transparent, it would be more the message of you're on your own. Do you know what I mean by that? Like our
dad?
Yeah, our own father he's an awesome dude.
Yeah.
The reality was, as far as the separation of our parents, just not always accessible. But when he was accessible, it was amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
If anything, that's what I would say as a woman.
And not only you're on your own, which is, sounds negative, but actually is somewhat positive too.
Got it.
The way I would put it is it's up to you.
I love it. Yeah.
That's the way it always felt with him. It's like, one of his sayings is the world's a wonderful place.
Yeah.
And it's up to you. It is up to you what you do with that.
Yeah. That was me really trying to scratch and figure out, I guess that could be this. But anyway, I do think, however, that concept of men are carrying a hidden wound or whatever, that I certainly can understand, and that a lot of times men are acting out of that wound and they don't even know it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. To kind of partner this up, then we're not going to go deep into this one, but this does bring up the female side because sometimes the wound is related. So again, Eldridge calls it the beauty to rescue. And just like men have core needs, the way he puts it is that her needs are to be romanced, to play an irreplaceable role in a great adventure. Would you fight for me? And to unveil beauty. So instead of, do I have what it takes? It's, am I beautiful or not? Am I worthy of your attention? When you hear those three core needs, what's your first impression?
That's pretty gross. No, honestly, it's just like, the first thing I think of is utter dependence. Not on God, on a man.
That's interesting. I guess if there's any of those that I could see, it would be the second one, meaning, I want to be on an adventure, but I want you to be a part of it. You are a core role in this adventure we're going on. And like, I'm not going to go away from you on my adventure. I'm going to bring you with me. Let's go,
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's a part of the weekend. But again, this is called Wild at Heart and the men's heart. So we're going to go right back to there. Is there anything else you want to say about this gendered part or the wounds, or we can go to number 3?
I will say there is one thing that struck me on this. I don't remember if it was a speaker or just somebody I was talking to at a table. And sorry, listeners, this is going to get a little ew. But basically talking about, whenever they have sex with their wife, and they plant the seed, it's like, it's not just for procreation, but it's like, it's the vital, almost elixir, I guess you could say, or a source of life for their partner. I don't know. It was weird how they put that. It was just very strange. And it's like, unless she has that, like she can't possibly move on with her life, go through life. It's just, I don't know. It just seemed very weird.
Yeah. One of the guys at my table was just absolutely distraught that his son was gay. He was beating himself up on, how did I wound my son that he turned out gay? He's actually more of a local guy too. So I know that that's a wound that he constantly bring up. But the thing that was kind of interesting over the years hearing it was, notice it's about him.
Yeah.
what did I do? It's my wound. I can't let this go. I must have wounded him. And, rather than accepting his son as he is, it's, I have messed up and now I need to fix this. Kind of like what you said with the wife being remarried. I still have to fix this. It's about him. Number 3, the battle to fight. For me, I think those first 2 topics, I was definitely stirred in different ways on those. And I would say even for you, wild at heart, there's a part of you that you love the wild. You're like, let's get out of here. I'm going to go hike. I'm going to go into the mountains and all of that stuff, right?
We've been identifying the problems that we're struck by during the weekend. But make no mistake, I came away from this weekend motivated, positively changed, felt like, I was kind of in it. It's only through retrospect that I realize all this other stuff.
Well, and again, when you're surrounded by 4 days of not as much responsibility, guys who are excited about, it's easy to get swept along,
Swept along. Do you remember me literally flying through?
Oh, I do. All right, we got to skip to the end for a second. We'll come back to number 3, but this is a great story. We were singing. We were all singing. This is, I think, the last session. Yeah. And we're singing about flying. Like, I'll fly away.
I don't remember the specific song, but something about flying, taking flight, whatever. And then I just took off and started running all around the small arena there or whatever, the room.
Well, and here's what's funny. Nobody else did.
I've been set free. Oh, my gosh. Wild at heart.
Well, I remember you looking at me like, "Can I do this?" I'm like, "Hey, do what you want." But I was banging the floor with my hands. I remember that. I was drumming along, and people were getting excited. But when you started running around, nobody else ran around, and it makes me think again, of course, of, "Hey, we got to be alive and free." Hey, too much, man. Too much. Where's the line?
I didn't actually mean that.
Am I not? Anyway, so picture right now, Doubtful Dave, flying around the arena. And I do literally mean he was flapping his arms like, this is amazing.
Yes, I was running fast and swaying my arms like I was flying.
Well, hey, if you've seen some footage of people at church when they start laughing and dancing and all of that, and you caught the spirit, man. You caught the spirit.
Exactly.
That was fun. Number 3, though, the battle. All right. The reason why I brought those first 2 topics up again is as far as like things that got tapped into. This one, the battle, is the part where I felt the strangest. Like I didn't quite get it. At this point, we are right in the middle of our conversation, and we're about to get to some good stuff for part 2. Fighting the devil. We will discuss the nature of evil, a little South Park, shooting guns, and swinging swords, and a couple of other conclusions next time. Just like any other episode, it's time. It's time for our Skeptic of the Show!
We think it's real important to question what you know, but before you leave this podcast, it's the Skeptic of the Show. Amen.
Have you heard of the famous magical duo Penn and Teller? Well, Penn Jillette is also an actor, inventor, and author. He has published 8 books and is known for his advocacy of atheism, scientific skepticism, and the First Amendment. Let's hear what he has to say in one of his books.
There is no God, and that's the simple truth. If every trace of any single religion were wiped out and nothing were passed on, it would never be created exactly that way again. There might be some other nonsense in its place, but not that exact nonsense. If all of science were wiped out, it would still be true, and someone would find a way to figure it all out again.
I'd recommend his 2012 book, God No, Signs You May Already Be an Atheist and Other Magical Tales. I've had people classify my critical analysis as another religion, or my thoughts as another type of faith. But I like the reminder from Penn Jillette that atheism is a religion, like not collecting stamps is a hobby. Join Doubtful Dave and I for part 2 on our next Funny You Say That Friday.
Look up to the sky, truth is what we find. Not in holy books, but in open minds. Reason, oh reason, you light up our way.
Can you help me conclude this episode?
Sure.
Thanks for listening to Funny You Say That. You can find all of our episodes, show notes, social media channels, and more at HeySkepticalScott.com. Our intro music was created by my friend Jimmy Dells. Any other music or sound effects were provided by our usual guest co-host, Artie Fisher.
Have a question? Interested in being a guest on our show? Or you just want to share a part of your questimony? Email my brother at HeySkepticalScott@gmail.com.
Drop the supernatural. Embrace the rational.
Believe in as many true things as possible.
See you every first and third Friday of the month. May skeptical thoughts be with you.
And also with you.
Cheers.